I'm really excited about this message coming up today because we have Jameson Jones here to share insights and keys into public speaking. Uh, Everybody loves seeing Jameson speak at conferences. He's one of the best speakers in the company, and he has thought about how to apply his knowledge and his techniques for all of you to think about using at all the events that you speak at. We're public speakers in training, we're public speakers in team meetings. Obviously, sometimes you'll get chances to speak at bigger events as well. And just being able to have platform skills is one of the most valuable skills in Vector, being able to have the presence and the delivery. And Jameson has all of it. And so I'm really excited to be able to have him share some great stuff today with all of you on this subject. Jay.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Go ahead and do this. Can I get the ability? I think I do have the ability to share. Let me see here. All right, there we go. All right, cool. So I'm going to be talking about impactful speaking today, and I appreciate you putting me on the agenda today, Dan. I want to tell you guys about something I saw for the first time in person ever. How many of you guys have ever been to or heard of an Ironman? Has anybody ever heard of this, right? So yeah, I think Evans crushed one of these before. Evans obviously really awesome. But earlier this year, I want to say it was, or maybe even at the end of last year, it was December. And I do a retreat with my family actually every year between Christmas and New Year's. And very similar like you guys do with your teams or maybe your division. You sit down, you make goals for the year, you make objectives, you have things that you're shooting for, things that you want to accomplish. And somebody in our family was like, hey, I want to do an Ironman. And I'm like, why do you want to do that? That sounds crazy. And for those of you guys that don't know what's included in an Ironman, it starts, and this is a half Ironman, by the way, but it starts with a 1.2-mile swim. For those of you guys that don't swim regularly, you might think to yourself like, oh, 1.2 miles, it's like, I might be able to do that. And then when you see how far 1.2 miles is, you're like, oh my God, how many people die halfway through this swim? Like, this is crazy. And then after the 1.2-mile swim, it gets followed up with a 56-mile bike ride. All right, 56-mile bike ride. So I kind of gauge this on when I used to take my daughter to school. I live in Elk Grove in the Central Valley. And to go from Elk Grove to Lodi to her school, it used to be 26 miles. So that was the distance from Elk Grove, where we lived, to her school. And then that's 26. So if I were to take my daughter to school from Elk Grove to Lodi and then back, all right, that would have been 52 miles. And there would be 4 more miles that I would have to bike just to get to 56. And then right after the 56-mile bike ride, there's a 13.1 mile run, a 13.1 mile run. And that 13.1 mile run is a half marathon. All right. So it's a half marathon. And I've run a couple of half marathons. The first one I ever run, I was hanging out with Jeremy Bell one night on a Friday night, and we were all kind of like drinking some adult beverages. And as you guys may know, sometimes adult beverages influence your confidence. And they were talking about this race that they had been prepping for. And Jeremy and I said, you know, we could do that. All right, what's 13 miles? Like, we'll do that. And we basically signed up with like 3 days notice or something like that. It was not very much at all. And Jeremy and I ran a 13.1 together. And what was awesome is there was a whole list of competitors, and my only goal was to not get last place. And I got good news, guys. I got second to last. No training, 13.1. It was awesome. Jeremy got third to last. He technically finished like 1 second before me. I think we were supposed to cross at the same time, but I know he jumped. It. But this is a total of 70.3 total miles. All right, 70.3 total miles. And just looking at how difficult this was, and all of I know this is just a half. It's kind of crazy. And what's really interesting, and the person that did this in my family, this is my wife. And my wife just finished her first half Ironman. She says first and only. I don't really believe that though. My wife, like, she tries to say like it's not going to be, it's not going to be an ongoing thing. But she's so competitive. Like, I know she's gonna want to do it again. And it was a really cool experience to watch. Like, I was so proud of her. And what's really even cooler than this is that before we had Kiyomi, who turns 14 this month, Kristen never played any sports. She never exercised. She never did anything athletic at all. The extent of her exercise 13 years ago was doing P90X right after she had Kiyomi. So over the last 10 plus years or so, she's made all these strides to essentially becoming a superhuman athlete. And what's even crazier, and I know you could see her smiling here at the end, she ran this race with a former DM, Casey Meyer, good friend of ours, and also Hung Wen, one of the CSPs in our division. They were there, and she beat both of these guys. Their times were 7 hours and 30 minutes. Casey's time was 7 hours and 58 minutes. And when she crossed the finish line, she was so pumped up and so excited. I'm super proud of her. But just looking at what it took to take from where she was initially on her health journey to where she's at today, it was a really impressive thing. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit later, but I just thought this was really cool and I wanted to share it with you guys. And when I think about public speaking, I often think about different meetings that you've been to, and how many of you guys have ever been in a meeting and you've thought to yourself, I could be doing something else right now. Has anybody ever had that thought before? All right, sure. All right. So Dan, look around the room right now, make sure all of these guys get in trouble for that. The reality though is I think that we all get to a point sometimes where we get distracted, and sometimes that's because of where we're at personally, but oftentimes it's because the speaker and the information that's being conveyed is not engaging enough to capture our audience. It's not there in a way where people actually want to be a part of the meeting, where they want to get that information. So it's so important to understand that when we're becoming this great speaker, and why this matters, it's because this is how we improve our influence as a leader, but more important, a business owner. When we're able to be an impactful speaker, we're able to engage our team, and we're able to accomplish a lot more. So another thing that it will do, it will increase your credibility in your organization and with your team. It will also create new opportunities for you. In some cases, you may speak at a team meeting, and I remember doing this as an assistant manager, speaking at a team meeting, and eventually that gave me the opportunity to become a recruiter or an interviewer, and then eventually got the opportunity to run training, and then soon I was talking at team meetings more frequently, and then eventually a division meeting I was able to speak at, and I remember getting tapped for my first SC1 to speak at that, and I was so excited, right? For those of you that have had the chance to get on stage and speak to a big group, it's such an exciting opportunity. It's very intimidating initially, but then it becomes one of these things that you just want to replicate over and over and over again. And I noticed that as I continued to get opportunities to speak, my confidence started increasing. I started becoming more excited about those opportunities, and the way I conveyed myself everywhere started to improve. But it's also where we get the opportunity to make a huge impact and inspire others to become better versions of ourselves. And if you're working in this business as a district manager, there's obviously tons of different ways where you can earn money in the United States. In our lifetime, like, you can make a lot of money doing a lot of different things. But what really is the difference between just earning income and having a great impactful career is what we get to offer to our customers and to our team, right? To our business. So when we get an opportunity to take these young adults and impact them in a positive way, we can ultimately change the trajectory of their entire life. And I think all of us can relate to that because we were all at one point that new representative that didn't really have an idea of what we wanted fully out of life, but we were able to see more for ourselves. And for a leader, this is where we sell our vision. This is where we take an average organization and we're able to make it an amazing organization. So this stuff makes a big difference. But I also got to tell you that when I was a new speaker, I was also my first year in college, I took a communications class and I got a C- in that class. All right. So I do want you to know that sometimes where you start is not always where you're going to finish. Maybe you guys might still think I'm a C- speaker. I think I'm at least a B at this point, but we get some progression. So I'm going to go over three main keys I'm going to cover today. The first one is preparation equals confidence. So I'm going to go over how to prepare and the importance of preparation. I'm also going to go over your presence and how this impacts the influence that you have, and then ultimately the execution or wrapping up your message or your speech or whatever you're talking about creates that impact. So let's start with preparation. And I'm going to teach you guys something called ACE. It's essentially an acronym and it covers three things. The first thing is your audience. Who am I speaking to? And I think this is a very important question to ask before you prepare your thoughts to any message. So sometimes, especially as we've been working in the business for a long time, we have heard a lot of different ways to accomplish the goals that we have in front of us. And what happens is that when we start to get new ideas and new information, we forget that the fundamentals are the things that got us to where we're at. So we start to spice up the food before anybody can handle the heat. And it's important that we keep it simple for our audience that is still a little bit newer. And when you get the opportunity to speak at bigger events like a conference or a major function, then you can start adding in all the ninja moves and the secrets, but we want to keep it simple for our newer audience. And sometimes in training, I have to catch myself, but we don't want to overteach because overteaching equals overwhelm. And we want to keep it as simple as possible. And remember that for most of us, our audience is our sales team, and we're just trying to get them to that first checkpoint. I look at a rep's career the same way I used to play Cruising USA, if you've ever played that video game. But as you're driving, you hit a checkpoint and then you get like 30 more seconds to get to the next checkpoint and then to the next checkpoint. So really, you're just trying to get your team to these different checkpoints until eventually they've built so much momentum that nothing's going to slow them down. The next big thing that you want to be thinking about in your preparation is what's my core message and what's the one thing that I want them to remember from my message? What's the big takeaway that I want my team to have after they listen to me speak to them? So sometimes I've seen speakers and they'll come prepared to a team meeting or to a function and they have like 10, 15 points. They got like 6 different scripts. They got like writing on their PowerPoint. It's really small. And they're like, take a picture of this. You guys, nobody's going to take a picture and look at it again in the future. All right. It just doesn't happen. So it's got to be palatable and it should be concise, like something small that they can take away and run with. And then the last thing is, what do I want them to do with this information, right? What is the end game or the goal that I want them to accomplish with the information that I just provided them? Sometimes we'll have a speaker that will have this amazing content, this amazing information, and then they have a very weak exit where there's no call to action. There's no direction to do something, and that just leaves people feeling good. This is essentially the ask for the order of a sales pitch, by the way. So this would be like your rep going through the entire demo saying, hey, this is the homemaker set. Thank you for your time. And we don't want to end a sales call ever like that, right? If we're doing a presentation with a customer. So similarly, we want to make sure that we're giving a call to action to our people. So here are some presentation tips, and I'll run through these relatively quickly. The first big thing is you personally, as a leader, have to continuously learn and grow. If you're stagnant in your development, you're not going to have a lot of information to share or convey to your team. So how do we learn and grow? We read. Right? Reading different books, that's obviously a big thing. And if I were to ask right now, how many books have you read this year? All right, how many books have you read this year or listened to this year? Some of you might say none. Some of you might say, well, I started one or two. And then some of you might say, I'm on book number 10 or on book number 15. And what's interesting, and I'm not going to have you put this in the chat, but I bet you that the person who's read the most this year is probably higher in the sales and performance reports more frequently than the person that's not developing. So our results are also going to be directly impacted by how we grow and how we learn. But what we learn, we're able to teach to our team, and your team's going to continue to grow as well. This also includes the stuff that you listen to, the podcasts, right? The audiobooks. And lastly, what we watch. So movies are great, but there's so much good content online nowadays. You can watch a lot of great stuff that you can share with your team that will be good. So when I'm thinking about a message, what I like to do as soon as I get the information for the message, I start cultivating my thoughts into an outline a couple of weeks in advance. And the big two things that I try to always rehearse or go over a little bit more thoroughly are going to be my opener and my close. All right. So what I'm opening with and how I'm closing out the meeting, these are the two big things that I'm going to spend time on rehearsing and practicing and make sure that I have down. And then I'll have 3 to 5 key takeaways, and I'm going to develop each one of those points thoroughly enough to where there's good information to back that up for the audience. When we're trying to gain attention from our audience, there's great ways to do this, but one really great way is to ask great questions. Great questions allow people the opportunity to think, to reflect, and to consider not only the information where they're receiving, but also where they're currently at in regards to the information that you're teaching. So if I were to ask you, when's the last time you stood up in front of a division or in front of your office and gave an excellent team meeting, right? What did you speak about? What was your presence like? How prepared were you? These are the little things that make a big difference. I also think about stories, and the way that our brains are wired with stories is that this is actually how information was conveyed from generation to generation prior to written language, right? People would sit around a campfire and they would tell stories about these legends and these people before us and things like that. And we have a way of retaining information very well through stories. Like we can hold on to that information better than if it's just a list of bullet points. So having a story that ties into the information is really valuable. And understand that when you're giving stories, you want to be specific with the details. People actually relate better to specific details than when you're very vague. When you're very vague, it feels like anybody. But when there's a specific story with specific details, we can take on the idea or the persona of the main character of those stories. So when you're telling these stories that you're talking about, make sure that you're specific with these details to get your audience engaged. It's also good to utilize great quotes. I usually in every message, I'll have a quote or two, things that resonate with me about the message. And then last thing that you can utilize to gain attention is important facts or data to support what you're talking about. When you're giving a message, whether it's online or in person, I also strongly encourage to have some sort of visual or handout to support your message. And the reason why I think a visual or a handout is important is that when you're speaking to an audience or you're talking to somebody for 15 to 20 minutes straight, it's very easy for their attention to bounce around, especially if you have ADHD like I do. You're probably thinking about 100 different things while the speaker's going on, and you may miss some of that information. But this allows you to organize the most important aspects of your message and then give it back to your team so you have it. And then when I go to give my messages, what I'll utilize is typically just a one page. All right. I usually just have a one page, and I would strongly encourage that you have an outline that you flow off of, not a 3 to 5 page fully written message that you're reading word for word. Because when you're reading a message word for word, it doesn't feel natural, and your audience will start to disconnect from the information. So the two parts that, again, you should rehearse and really have down are your opener and your close, but everything in between should just be off the outline where you can flow. And this gives you a little bit of flexibility to change the stories in the moment, like, or change the flow of the information. But also it's going to allow you to not feel like you're making mistakes if you lose your place in the outline or if you're bouncing around. So don't read, flow. And then the last thing is respect the clock. For those of you that get the opportunity to speak at a big event, this is really, really important. Studies have indicated that most people are only going to listen for about 17 to 22 minutes. This is called the TED Talk formula. TED Talk has it dialed. So if you think you have this amazing message and you're up there for an hour, I will let you know that that audience has lost you at some point in that message. So bring that information in a little bit more tight, and you'll be able to make a better impact. So now let's talk about your presence. So your presence is how you show up on the meeting. So whether this is on Zoom or online, whether this is on a video, whether this is in front of your team or on the podium or at a conference, these are some great tips. So the first thing is be fully present and relaxed when you're giving your message. We all have different things happening in our life, so there'll be things that will pull our attention, but it's important that if we're going to ask our audience to be here, we should be here as well. Next thing is your attire should look sharp, all right, or at least appropriate. So when we're talking about sharp attire, if you're at a big conference, you should be one of the better dressed speakers on the agenda. And the reason why you want to be dressed really well is because naturally people will look at that and recognize that you're somebody of credibility. So make sure that you represent yourself well when you're doing those, when you're giving your message. With your body language, I think it's okay to walk around a little bit. I think it's also important that when you're standing at the podium, that you stand up tall with your shoulders back and your chest open. This allows you to look confident from the podium. But stuff like this, when you're like leaning on the podium, or if you have your hands in your pockets, right? These are things that make people feel less confident in what you have to say. So your body language is going to be conveying a message, and we listen and receive information not just by what's being said, but by what we see and also what we hear. So how people say things and how people see what you're doing while you say those things. So all of these things should tie together. And you'll notice that I'll like talk with my hands and things like that. These are also little aspects of that. With your facial expression, remember to smile every now and then, especially at the opener, so that you're welcoming and you're inviting when you with your information, and your pace, tone, and volume. So this is again like how fast you're speaking, the way that you get excited about certain things, or if you're trying to drive a point home and you pause at certain things, or other moments in the message where we raise our volume so that people really understand that this is something that they should be getting in their notes or retaining. These are the things that we do, the little nuances that really make an impactful message more impactful how we present it. And then I can't overemphasize the value of a pause. Pauses are so much more valuable than you realize. And I notice, especially with newer speakers, that if there's a moment of getting lost or confusion in their notes, there's these gaps that get filled with the uhs and the ums and the filler words and hold on a second. But the pause creates a lot of power. And here's a quote for you guys that you've already heard a million times, but it's not what you say, but how you say it. And this is great for all the information that you use. But a great YouTube, by the way, and there's some corny stuff on this page, so proceed with caution, because some of it's like how to date and how to pursue people. But there's actually a lot of really great content on Charisma on Demand, where they look at different famous like speakers and interviewers, and they look at what they're doing in those messages. And this was always a really great resource for me over the years to just get some good value about how to present myself better. Now let's talk about execution, or wrapping up the message. So at the end of every message, we should recap the one key message or the one main point of our message that we're trying to take away. And we want to give a clear action, or essentially an ask for the order, at the end of our message. So this is where we say to our team or to the people we're communicating with, this is what you should go do now. This is your next step. And I always try to end with energy, where we either tie back in a story, a quote, or throw down a challenge for somebody to go accomplish. So to bring this all together, the first thing that we talked about was the ACE prep. And the ACE prep is knowing your audience, understanding your core message, and having a solid end to your message. When it comes to your presence, you want to look, sound, and act like a leader. When you present yourself well, your information will be better received. And lastly, our execution is to finish strong and to have a strong call to action. So I opened this talking about an Ironman. And I think it's so funny because, the Ironman, the idea of this is just crazy to me. And after watching it, I have less interest ever pursuing it than before. Right? At first, I was thinking, man, if my wife could do it, I should try to do it too. And after that, I'm like, all right, never mind. I totally changed my mind, especially after I saw the way Casey Meyer hobbled across the finish line. I was like, man, that guy looks like he's like 18 feet away from keeling over and ending it. So I will say, though, that the journey to becoming a great speaker has a lot of similarities. And when Kristen was preparing for her Ironman, it started with these 5-mile bike rides and these 1-mile runs in the morning and the occasional, swims in the pool. And eventually that grew to these mornings over the last couple of months where she would go on these 30-mile bike rides and 8-mile runs. And she would go swim a lake, and she would swim like 1, even 2 miles, sometimes more than what she needed to get prepared. And I think about that as a public speaker because all of us start somewhere and we want to be the Ironman today, but that doesn't necessarily mean that just because we want it, we'll get there. We need to take those steps, but first it's aiming for a target. And that target for you should be, what type of speaker do I want to be? And where can I utilize my speaking to make a big impact? I would also encourage you to prepare a plan for how you want to become a better speaker, but also for your team meetings and for all the future messages that you intend on giving to your teams. Have these things detailed and thought out. Your team knows when you're not prepared. They know when you're just winging a team meeting, and it doesn't serve you or your team. If anything, having an unprepared team meeting or an unprepared plan is actually worse for your organization than not having a team meeting. Like, it's almost better to just skip your team meeting, because if you're wasting your representative's time, their feeling is, why am I here? I'm never showing up again. So if you're going to ask them for their time, and you're going to help them get better, make sure that you're doing everything you can to do that. So I would encourage you that as you're going into this sales week and you're looking at your team, look at your team for a moment. Look at your opportunities. How many demos got done last week? How many sales do you need to be on target for your goal? How many recruits do you need to get? What message can you convey to your team, and what can you focus on with your organization to help them grow from where they're at today to the places that they need to be? And the last thing is just to go crush your message. If you have that target, you have your plan, it's all about the execution at this point, and you'll be good. I'll end with this. We don't become great by thinking or reading or anything like that. We actually become great by doing. And when I looked at what Kristen did with her Ironman, she didn't become great because she wanted to become an Ironman. And she didn't become great because she started running a little bit. She got great by doing it again and again and again. And like all of the great speakers in Vector, they get great by doing it over and over and over again. So when you get the opportunity to practice this skill, you will become great eventually just by doing. So go out this week, prepare your team meetings, and crush your events so you guys can lead your teams to where you'd like to take them. Thanks, Dan.